the YouTube stream at the moment. Oh, there we go. We would love it if you would put in the chat, if as by way of introducing yourself, we would love it if you would put in your name, where you're calling in from, and something that's inspiring you this morning, or in general. And we are live as well. So if you know somebody who might be interested, we can share that link with you. And we'd love to just get everybody's name and voice into the room. And I think we can just go ahead and go for it, huh? I don't think we need to wait. So, hello, everybody. My name is Jesse Bloom. I'm a chef, an activist, and an entrepreneur. I've been cooking since the 90s professionally. I have been running kitchens since shortly thereafter. And I come from generations of social justice warriors and activists. And my work and my walk in the world has always been to find that sweet spot at the confluence of making delicious food, gathering humans, and the magic that happens when that happens, and the craft of how do we make a social impact. And so what we want to do today is we want to invite you in to a conversation, and invite you into ways of seeing and ways of thinking about things. And we also really want to you to invite us into different ways of seeing and different ways of thinking about things. And I want to first introduce our panelists, or our co-hosts, and they can just speak for, briefly about where they're coming from and what and how they landed here. So Dana, will you introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jesse. Welcome again to everybody. I am Dana. I'm originally from Slovakia, but actually I have been living in Amsterdam, Holland, for the past 7 or 8 years. So it's basically my second home. I don't have any formal education when it comes to food. I'm not really a food activist. So I think many of you will be able to relate to me. I'm just a regular human, unlike Jesse, let's say. My interest in food stems from the fact that I also don't have the education. I'm not formally connected to food activism. I want to know what I can actually do in my life to make better choices as a consumer, to live a little bit more sustainably, and how I can offset my, let's say, environmental impact in this way. I also have a job I have a corporate job. So I really want to at least see in my private life how I can be a little bit more sustainable, think a little bit more about our planet, and contribute to this world.
Awesome. Thank you, Dana. We also have Neha Jamani joining us. Neha, do you want to say hi and introduce yourself a little bit? Oh, Neha, your audio's not working. Neha, why don't you pop in when your audio is back on? Neha has been a part of our planning team, and she is kind of she's the glue on the back end. For those of you who are just joining us, we would love to have you say where you're calling in from, and it can even just be one word about what you're inspired about. We want to make sure we've got everybody's voice in the room. And today, what we're going to be doing is, in just a moment, I'll introduce our kind of our lead speaker, and we're going to be having a conversation about, in this context specifically, about what it means to hold privilege, and how we consume, and how we can do that in a way that's more mindful and more impactful. And we really hope that you leave with the sense of being inspired to take action in big and little ways. And so with that said, I will invite my esteemed colleague from Colorado, Victoria Silva, to share a little bit about about her story and her journey, and there's a message for each of us in that. So go for it, Victoria.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. As Jesse said, I am Victoria. I live in Colorado. I am a hairstylist and makeup artist. I put myself through school, but I am a biochemistry student. So I have a lot of specific interest in the really small nuances of how we got here and how we're humans and all that cool stuff. So if I get a little science-y, pardon me and just let me know what's kind of going over your head. My personal story and how I got involved in this, like I will put out there that I don't have my degree yet. So just putting that out there, I'm still a student. But I am someone who's very overweight. It's just a fact of my life. And I lost 100 pounds once through diet and exercise. And I gained it all back due to reasons. And then when it came to losing it again, I realized that despite the fact that I had lost 100 pounds before, healthy, and it worked out, I didn't know what to eat again. It was just, it should be easy, but it's not. You know, there's so many misleading labels. There's diet fads all over the place that you're not sure what to eat or what's fresh food. And if you're not used to cooking, not everyone wants to eat chicken and a veggie every single day. I personally really got passionate about this when I got a free week or two of HelloFresh, that food delivery service. And it taught me such simple things that I didn't realize were accessible for me, like how to make a glaze or how to pickle your onions right when you start cooking. And it adds so much flavor and enhances things to what you're eating. And so it's like, yay, I got the part of eating fresh food. I got the part of chopping my ingredients. But now what about all this packaging? This isn't sustainable. This isn't right. So it's like I got the part of eating the fresh food that I'm supposed to be eating, but I don't feel good about it. So I don't know what the answer to all of these barriers and things that we encounter are, but I would love to have a discussion about it. So without further ado, I will start unless Neha's come back in and wants to introduce herself. Let me know.
I'm good, but I'm just gonna quickly say it. I'm Neha, I'm from Dubai, and I'm currently supporting these great people for this Unconference. And Victoria, please.
Wonderful.
Victoria, before you jump in and kind of get presenting, I just want to point out in the chat that we have humans calling from Ireland and Malaysia and Texas, countries far, 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 far away. Just kidding, Texas people. But I just think it's amazing that we have all these people from all over the world. We've got humans from Colombia and California on this call, and I want to really just invite everybody into a moment of acknowledging how remarkable it is that there's all these people in this one room, early or late in the day, whatever time it is, who care about making the world a better place through food. And that there's an incredible amount of just possibility just in knowing that there are this many people who will show up to a conversation like this, and that you're a part of that conversation. We're not the masters of this area of expertise, and we hope we create a frame that's exciting for you to share in. We've got Sylvia calling in from Portugal, so Victoria, why don't you take it away?
Wonderful. So I'm going to start sharing my screen so we can start the presentation. Give me just one moment, make sure I'm doing it right.
Sorry, I didn't have share screen enabled, but I do now.
No worries. All right, I hope you all can see this. Let me know if you can't. And we do have something called Slido. I hope I'm saying that right. It's something you can type in our Slido number onto their website and kind of submit questions to us. So you will see that in just a moment. So food privilege and how we consume, that's why we're all here. I want to remind everyone that privilege is not an insult. I know in the beginning of the session in the keynote, they were kind enough to list a few privileges to get people thinking. Your privilege can simply mean that you have clean water to drink, or that you have a supermarket that's in walking distance from you. There's many privileges that we face, or perhaps that you can lift a bag of groceries because you don't have any ailments bothering you that stop you from doing that. So I just want us to all know that privilege is not an insult, it's just an observation, and it's a fact. All of us have privilege in a different way, and I want to talk about those things today. Okay, so part one will be individual. We have the topics we're going to be going over is a brief history of us. We are going to be going over hunter-gatherers, the impact of industrialization, what the universe and everything inside it is made of. That's where we're going to get extra sciencey. Barriers to feeding humans, and then what do we do about all those barriers? And here's a quote that I just wanted us all to reflect on. Hunger is an inevitable consequence of an economic system that lacks both ecological and social integrity. Persistent hunger around the world is a direct consequence of an unsustainable global economy. If we are serious about alleviating hunger, we must be willing to work for sustainability. And what does that speak to? It speaks to that there's a lot of aspects of sustainability that we have to address. It's not just about plastic. It's not just about soil regeneration. It is about the people, as Charles mentioned in our keynote, who are creating this food. Essentially in the universe, when you have energy, energy is lost when you do work. And if we keep crushing and not supporting and not fulfilling the lives of the people who are creating food for us, eventually there is not going to be anyone left to create food for us. And so this is where Slido, we are number 999. You can join us. That's where you can submit questions. You are also welcome to put them in the chat, but as you submit questions, all of you can vote on them with each other. So if you think someone asks a really great question and you also want to know the answer, you can kind of upvote that little question, and then we'll go through it, and then you can also stop halfway through and address something if really, something really cool comes up. So does everyone got that? Leave it up for 3, 2.
This is kind of a fun system. Like if you're sometimes shy about doing this kind of thing, it's yeah, it's a fun little thing that we've discovered. So if you have a moment, open it up on your phone, and the chat works great too.
And it's anonymous, so that way if you have a question, I know that when it comes to privilege and sustainability, sometimes we feel like we're not allowed to ask certain questions. So I do want you to know that the Slido is anonymous if you have a tricky question. Wonderful. So a brief history of us. Our ancestors, Ardipithecus, can walk upright and make tools. That was about 4 to 6 million years ago. So quite some time ago. A little illustration on the left for you. 1 to 3 million years ago, our teeth began to change to encompass a wider diet. So that means we had more flat teeth because we were introducing more plants into our diet as a form of energy. And this is actually more efficient. Producers produce the most energy for us. So if we're getting the energy straight from the source, that's more efficient. So we all evolved to be able to digest that food and be able to get it in our bodies easier. About 12,000 years ago, roughly, humans began agriculture. And that means we started raising our own livestock. We started growing our own food and staying in one place to do those things. Prior, we were mostly hunter-gathering, and there's various reasons why those things could have changed. The weather could have made it difficult to keep moving around, or perhaps they found a good spot with a good water source. There's many reasons why we began moving to agriculture, but mainly because we started civilization. And when civilization started, I'm not even going to say the year because anthropologists argue over it. So at some point, we started gathering in cities. And then about in the 1800s, which is only about 200 years ago, we had the Industrial Revolution, and this changed the world dramatically. Since the Industrial Revolution, in about 100-year span or so, the population of the Earth went from 1.6 billion to 7 billion due to the Industrial Revolution. We jumped billions and billions and billions of humans because we had so many more resources, and that was going to be good, right? We're going to all be able to feed ourselves, right? Hopefully. Today, unfortunately, food is for profit. So I want to introduce to you the Hadza. They are hunter-gatherers that are still alive today and doing their thing as hunter-gatherers. We don't have to look at fossils or history records to see what hunter-gatherers ate because they are still alive and doing their thing today. So I would love to tell you about them. The Hadza of Tanzania, they have an extremely balanced diet. It's seasonal. They gather nuts, legumes, fruits, seeds, tubers, meat, and their favorite of all, honey. And for anyone who doesn't know what a tuber is, it's kind of just like a potato. It's a root vegetable. And so every single day, these people, they do not have their own agriculture. They do not grow anything for themselves, and they do not have any permanent dwellings. Every single day, they go out to hunt and to gather food. Children as young as 5 in the Hadza can collect half of their own nutritional value on their own because they know what's food and they just reach for it. So children as young as 5 can feed themselves. And what does this tell us? They can access berries. They go around, and then as they eat the berries, they spit them out and they put seeds into the ground to grow for future generations. And they are immediately, as they are eating, they are immediately putting back into the soil, into the earth, and returning to it what they just took from it. This is Wanda and her husband, Makoa. This is right here, you can see the tools that they use to hunt or gather every day. So when I talked about 4 million years ago, our ancestors began using simple tools. Simple tools are really all you need to make that jump, to make life easier to gather food. So here you can see he has an axe to extract honeycomb from tree trunks, and bow and arrows for hunting and defense, and she has a blade-tipped stick to dig for tubers. How we consume and the impact of industrialization. So I did some math, and if the time modern human life has existed, we're reduced to 1 hour. And I'm only talking about the last 200,000 years, not our million-year-old ancestors. The time passed since the Industrial Revolution would be 3.6 seconds. So a lot of us have grievances with how the Industrial Revolution has changed us in the way that we consume and the way that we eat. But the good thing is that it hasn't been that long. We can still change it. It's still open to change. We can still have criticism for it and mold it into what we need it to be. What could industrialization have done to how we consume? Industrialization could have been amazing. We have the power right now to give clean water to everyone. It could have offered us biodiversity. We could have had pockets all over the world where we're sharing information and we are keeping a great balance of food, and instead of just having one type of banana that we all know, or one type of quinoa that we all know. We could have had that. We could have had so many cool things. But instead, I would like to tell you what we got instead. So I would like to tell you some things that happened that you may not know about to kind of give you some information to what I'm thinking of. In the 1990s, pork lobbyists spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on pushing pork and bacon to the American public. Before then, bacon wasn't what it was today. People were they were trying to move towards healthier diets. Beef patties were extremely lean. They didn't have a lot of fat in them or a lot of flavor. And they had to take pork to Europe to try and sell it because nobody wanted to eat it because it was so fatty. So all they did was throw a couple $100,000 at it and say, pork good, pork amazing. And here we are today, bacon shirts, bacon, all kinds of bacon products. So that's one way that we have been, a lot of us love bacon, but would we have the same way if the lobbyists hadn't pushed that on us? People used to eat it with breakfast or with their beans, but not the way that, you can eat bacon wrapped anything, honestly, at this point. I wanted to point out that the Tyson Food top 6 executives make $38 million combined, and the average hourly worker makes about $15 an hour. When the pandemic happened in 2020, I know that a lot of us witnessed that some of the lowest paid workers who do not have benefits or health insurance had to stay open to feed people. They were suddenly essential, even though people had scoffed at them for years and years and years for asking them to increase their wages. According to the United Nations, over half of all food producing soils are moderately or severely degraded. And I don't know if any of you know that there is a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. What a dead zone is when all of the water from the Mississippi River is kind of pouring into the Gulf of Mexico. We have all these chemicals entering, and through processes, literally nothing can live there. Nothing can live there. It's just dead. There's nothing in the water because of all the chemicals that have been trickling down from all over the US that dump into the Gulf of Mexico. Sheep meat and dairy products are highly processed food, devastating diet-related diseases like heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and some diet-related cancers have reached epidemic levels in the US. And it's threatened biodiversity in a way that we've never seen before.
Victoria, I'm just giving you a quick time check. We want to be moving to a conversation with folks in like 5 to 7 minutes. So I want to make sure we get to hear your personal story in the midst of all this too.
Perfect. Thanks so much. What the universe and everything inside it is made of. So what are we made of? We are actually made of stardust, which is really cool. We are mostly 96% of our bodies are made of oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen. We also have other trace minerals like sodium, magnesium, potassium, iron, zinc, things that you recognize. Those are literally the building blocks of our bodies. And I love this quote, just wanted to share with you all. You couldn't be here if the stars hadn't exploded, because the elements were created in nuclear furnaces of the stars. And the only way for them to get into your body is if those stars were kind enough to explode. It's very, very poetic, but the stars in one hand came, or the atoms in one hand came from a different star than the atoms in your other hand. It's very, very cool and very awesome that we got here to be the living organisms that we are today. And I want to talk about how there are producers and consumers. There are only two. You either produce or you consume. Humans are consumers. And then where do we get energy from? Producers are autotrophs, and the optimal source of energy as the further we are from producers. Fruit, tubers, root vegetables, leafy greens, legumes, things in a pod, and berries. We also get energy from meat and other things like that. But what humans need to optimally nourish ourselves, we need proteins, fats, carbs, vitamins and minerals, and clean water. And that's why I wanted to introduce the Hadza, because this isn't complicated. We as humans know that we need to eat, and it's because we're just animals and we know that we need to eat. We drink the milk from our mother's breast. We just need to eat and we need nourishment. And there are only about 100 elements in the world that can make up the food that we have. There's a million organisms around the planet, and we've just decided that we like the taste of kale. We've decided that we like what romaine is like. We've decided that we like potatoes. But really, we found all the food that we eat by going, I wonder what this tastes like, and hoping that it wasn't catastrophic when we ate it. And then why is water so important? Billions of people around the world are continuing to suffer from poor access to water, sanitation, and hygiene. And when we think of clean water, I know that some people's minds may go to third world countries or places where water is completely inaccessible. But I want to remind you all of the very recent Flint, Michigan, even here in the United States. And I know that not all of us are from the US, but here in the US in Flint, Michigan, there wasn't clean water to access to people here in 2020, 2021. And then all of you remember the infamous, or many of you may remember the infamous Erin Brockovich, where she had to sue a company for what the water did to people. So this isn't just affecting people in third world countries. It's right here in our home, right here in our backyards. Well, and we know what to eat. Why is it complicated? It's complicated because industries have made it very complicated for us, and it's for profit. As Charles was saying, it is no longer, it is just for profit. You used to trade, we used to benefit each other, we used to have the connection to nature, but now we have that connection to the supermarket instead of the connection to the ground. Get situated. So I wanted to discuss some of the barriers that people face. And you can type into the chat or you can come on, but I know that nobody wants to hear something that they already know. You don't want anyone to tell you about something that you've already heard of. So if anybody wants to pop in or talk about some barriers that can be faced when you have a disability or due to your age, I'll give y'all a second to pop in. And if not, I can give y'all some of the ideas that I had.
One thing that that we wanted to share with you all is, and I just learned about this myself, is there's a way you can actually annotate and change the screen on Zoom yourself. So if you go up into the top, at the very top of your Zoom screen, there'll be a green block that says you're viewing Victoria Silva's screen. And if you click on the down caret next to view options, you'll have a choice to annotate. And this allows you to draw and type right into the document. I'm typing something right now, and so we wanted to invite you to annotate this by sharing. Can you just reframe the question, Victoria? What are we inviting people to share here?
Absolutely.
Privileges or lack of privilege, or what are we inviting
So
people
these are
to?
barriers that people face. Like, for example, Christine Bonadurio just said mobility limitations. When it comes to older and individuals, sometimes they literally can't pick up a package of food delivery. Sometimes they do not have a car because they can no longer drive. So they can't drive to the supermarket. And with COVID happening right now, are they going to take a public transportation? That's not safe for them. Are they going to take a random Uber? That's not safe for them. So I want us to kind of discuss the barriers that people face, but I know that sometimes this might feel like activism 101 to people. So I just don't want to tell you things that you already know, but let's discuss barriers.
There's also two questions on Slido. The first one was, well, it's more of a comment, is that, do you know that our teeth are still changing? Nowadays, some people don't just grow the canines anymore.
Oh yes, we're constantly changing. Evolution is always happening between generations. You can't stop it. It's literally not possible. It's a very cool thing. We are always evolving, and it's on such a small scale. Like I said, 6 million years ago is where our ancestors started talking, or walking upright, and it's taking us 5 million years to get here. So we are always evolving, and it's very cool that now that we're documenting ourselves, we'll be able to see those changes later.
Cool. And the second question was, why do we see these dead zones? And is it mostly the food industry that is actually contributing to them?
That is an excellent question. So yes, it is absolutely the food industry. One of the favorite things I've ever seen was, I don't know if any of y'all have seen that Queer Eye episode where they were redoing someone's room who does activism, and they rode their bikes there and they were very proud of it. And when they arrived, she informed them that it's great that you rode your bike and all, but really it's the corporations who are polluting everything and causing most of the damage on such extreme scales that, riding your bike to work will help a little bit, but really it's the pollution caused by the corporations. And we have dead zones because there's so much agriculture in the US that as the water runoff, I mean, this is leading from like the top of the United States, and it just goes down and it accumulates. And so the reason you have dead zones is because things that thrive off oxygen, they have a good time, they have a great time, and then they die. And then as their bodies sink to the bottom of the ocean, as they're decomposing, they deplete the water of oxygen. So the reason that there is a dead zone is because there is no oxygen left in the water because of the imbalance that the chemicals are causing in the water.
Victoria, can you click through a couple of the other categories that we have to invite people to think about?
We also have race and location. So some examples of race and location, the barriers that people face. When it comes to race, if an example of something that's completely awful is that Black individuals in America are 3 times more likely to have one of their limbs amputated unnecessarily due to having diabetes. And that creates all kinds of other barriers for them, transportation wise, healthcare wise, somebody taking care of them taking care of others. But the fact that diabetes is caused by, not a lot of access to education, not knowing what they're supposed to eat, reading a label that says, 28 grams of protein in this yogurt, but not seeing that the yogurt also has 30 grams of sugar, or what that means. We had corporations that lobbied to have sugar listed as grams instead of teaspoons or tablespoons on our nutrition labels, and they claimed that people could more easily recognize grams than tablespoons. They knew that people would know what 30 tablespoons of sugar meant. They wouldn't know what 30 grams of sugar is, and it was intentional. So there's things that affect you all over the place. And location, for example, could be a matter of the school lunches that you have access to. There was redlining done in the US where minorities, Black people, people of color were not given loans. And so they have worse tax rates, they have worse neighborhoods as far as economics go, and therefore their children suffer in school lunches because of systematic oppression that has been happening for decades. Let's see, some great suggestions here. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that are there other slides, Victoria?
Yes,
that
there
you want to
is
talk about?
education and income status, but other than that, this is just an open discussion to discuss barriers now. We have what can we do about it, and join us at Slido. So yeah, right now we can just discuss the food deserts. It seems like people just kind of want to let me give you examples. So there's a prevalence of diabetes being diagnosed in communities. Native Americans actually in the US have the highest chance of diabetes by far. And that is because we often hear about the plight of like Black people or Hispanic people in the US, but Native Americans, there's so few of us left that the cries are not heard as loudly as the rest of people. Age-related functional decline, absolutely. Food deserts. If anyone doesn't know what a food desert is, it means that a grocery store isn't accessible to you, and the closest thing you may have is a convenience store. Often people say that you can save money by getting a Costco membership or a Sam's card, but they don't realize that you have to have the fees to have the Costco card. You have to have the funds to be able to buy in wholesale at a time. Often being in poverty costs you more. You don't have credit. You don't have the ability to go buy, 1,000 plates at a time or 1,000 nuts or olive oil at a time. And so you have to buy the small costing things over and over again, which keeps you in poverty.
What we want to do is we want to shift to really hearing like some of the wisdom that's in the room. The conversation, I think in many ways the fact that you're here in the room means that you probably have some sense of privilege and some awareness of it and some interest in either in utilizing privilege in a really good way or in breaking down some of the barriers to privilege. And we wanted to make sure that that we opened up the space to a conversation to hear what you're doing about it or what you think we can do about it, so that you feel like that there's some kind of action or some kind of possibility that's taken forth from this. I know for me, when I hear in one concentrated lump all of the things that that are wrong, it can be a little bit overwhelming or a lot overwhelming. And I want to bring in the frame of doing what you. It's actually a frame from the Greek Stoics, and it's like doing what you can from where you stand with what you have. So my activism has always been rooted in what am I good at? What kind of resources do I have? And how can I make an impact with what I have? And so with those three questions and this sort of frame of like, it should be really simple to feed ourselves, but somehow it's gotten really complicated. It should be really simple to like take care of our neighbors and make sure everybody has food, but it's difficult. And that we each have agency and some ability to make an impact in the world. We would love to hear what you're doing or what's being done in your community, and to really just open up the floor to a discussion. Do you have anything that you want to add to that, Victoria?
No, I think that was great. I think people are putting some great suggestions in here, and I would love to hear from others what they have to say.
Maybe we can go to I don't know, that maybe we can go to an open screen instead of the screen share, and then we can just
Sure.
I'll be in gallery zone, and then that way if you either want to raise your hand, we're a smallish group, so if you just want to let us know if you have some thoughts about what you can do in your own, or what you can do, what's being done, talk a little bit from your location. Tiffany.
Hey, I'll go ahead and talk. I just had an experience yesterday. I'm from New York, and my parents are immigrants from Cuba. My parents are trying to be healthy, and it's so frustrating because my father makes these milkshakes. He's like, okay, I'm going to switch to fruit juice. And so he started making these shakes with fruit juice. And I looked at the carton. I was like, Dad, this has 42 grams of sugar and corn syrup is the first ingredient after water and all this stuff. And he's like, I don't know what that means. And it's so frustrating because people are trying to be healthy and they don't know what to do. And I mean, I don't know what to do still. I've gone through not buying meat and dairy at stores and like just doing all this stuff. So just to add to like not knowing and being confused by like all of the different types of marketing and everything. And yeah, for me, I'm just buying less meat or not buying meat and dairy from traditional stores, but I don't know what else we could be doing.
I would love to hear any other responses or ideas that you have for Tiffany. Tiffany, one of the things that is definitely not something I even think about, but just something I do. I spend a lot of time in grocery stores because of my work. And shopping around the edges of the grocery store is a great way to do it. The vegetables are usually on one side, and then you've got the meat and the protein and the sort of dairy and eggs and like the kind of nutrient dense, more whole foods, as opposed to the packaged stuff, which is in the middle. And I notice that I always just kind of do laps around the grocery store, and that might be a simple way to to talk even to your dad about like, hey, work with the vegetables. Anybody else have any other ideas or comments based on just what Tiffany shared? Or Chris, I see you're unmuted. Chris, we can't hear you. Your audio is off. It doesn't look like you're muted, but I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you now. It was your earbuds.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, my name is Chris. I'm a nutritionist and a chef as well. Yeah, one tip for Tiffany is to always go back to 1 or 2 generations ago. So in the case of your dad, probably is an immigrant, from Cuba. So you have to think what your grandfather or your great-grandfather used to eat back in the day and all they used to eat back in the day. So in order for him to understand the type of food which is good for him, and also to educate him better, it's really important to just remember, when I was young, my mom used to cook this vegetable. We had access to such and such foods, Now, when you remember or when you have an idea of what your elders or your ancestors used to eat, then you have to force yourself to make the choice. When you make the choice of going to the shop, just make the choice of trying to buy the type of food which are closer to what your elders or your ancestors used to eat or used to cultivate. Also the bad things with the society where we live right now is there has been a serious disconnection, of individual people to nature. It only took probably 1 or 2 generations, our parents who eventually immigrated or migrated to big cities, they unfortunately love their connection to their land, to their traditional land, to their traditional culture, and also to nature, of course, I think it's Victoria, you made a great analogy earlier where you said something great, which is we are part of universe, we are, every cells and every molecule can be found everywhere in nature and the universe, so which means that we are designed to be inside this environment, inside nature,
Mm-hmm.
So which means that we have to consciously, make an effort like to, of course, to preserve it, but the double-edged thing, sword, which is like the more damage we do to our environment and to our lands, and the more pollution we put to our food we eat. You see what I'm saying? And then the more illnesses and diseases we bring within ourselves, you see? So we are intrinsically linked, to our environment. You talked earlier about the issues with like, the diabetes affecting the indigenous communities, as from, the Native Americans, for us, I'm African, for the African or Black people, Europeans or traditional people, yeah, this is due to the type of food we eat, to the excess sugar, we ingest, but the problem is like sugar, the form it is, it's a new form, it's a new way, it's a new kind of food. And that kind of food was directly born, to the excess, industrialization of our food, to the excess, access to manufacture food. You see what I'm saying?
Chris,
so it's important.
Chris, we have just a couple minutes left, and I want to make sure we get a couple other voices in the room.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. Is there anybody else who wants to share, something that you are doing or that you're seeing done that makes an impact for you personally, or you're seeing that makes an impact in your community, in terms of creating, breaking down barriers to privilege or using your privilege in a good way? CR, and am I saying your name right?
No, close enough though. It's Kieran. I'm from Ireland.
Kieran. Yeah. Hi, Kieran.
How you all doing? Victoria, great talk. Well done. Like brilliant points, and loads to get the head going. In Ireland, we have a huge kind of grow it yourself movement going on, where we're trying to just get people to grow something, anything that you consume yourself. And if you go out and you buy a pack of seeds, put in some soil and grow something, we've a big push going on now. If you grow a couple of plants in a small pot and give them to people and just give them away, and what happens is if you were to grow anything, and even 2% of what you eat you were to grow yourself, it makes you take heed of the other 98% of what you're eating and what you're doing. So if you just start that process and get your head into what is going on and what you're consuming, it starts that knock-on effect of everything else that you're putting into your body and everything else that you're trying to do. So if I could give anyone advice, is just grow something, grow some chives, grow a basil plant, grow a tomato plant, grow anything as small as you can. Anyone can do it. It doesn't matter where you live. You can grow it indoors, outdoors, whatever. And if you're going to grow one, it's just as easy to grow two and give one away to somebody that, it will make a little bit of a difference to them. Somebody that mightn't be so in tune with that kind of thing, but doing that little small thing has a huge knock-on effect, and it grows and it multiplies. And I think it's a very powerful mechanism just to be aware of what you're eating, just that little start. So that's Kieran, all. Well done, guys. Great talk.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I don't know what the number is, but it's astronomical. Something like 40% of the food that goes into our food distribution system gets thrown away. And a lot of that just happens to food in the fridge. And so it really speaks to the point that you're making, which is you get a different sensitivity to the food if you have to grow it. And we are actually going to take a pause or a break. We'll be back in 15 minutes, but I wanted to leave with this thought. I think it ties a lot of things together. It's this idea that like it can be really simple. I have a friend, he's real spiritual, and and he's like, humans have a conversation going on with God. And they're like really frustrated because like there's not enough to eat. And he's like, I put it on the ground for you. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, it's on the floor. All you have to do is bend down and pick it up and eat it. Right. Like, so it's like, it's supposed to be simple, and that like, and the more that we can connect with the simplicity of food and of feeding ourselves in the ancient way, right? Like that Chris was talking about, and in this way of giving away, like Kieran was talking about, then really, we can start making these incremental changes in our own lives. And we will be having a conversation about collective impacts and collective challenges in our next session, which will start in 14 minutes. The Zoom link is the same. So you're welcome to just join us. Is that true? No, it's a different. Is it a different Zoom link or the same Zoom link?
I think it's the same.
Okay.
But maybe I'll just end with a little teaser on what we actually will be discussing
Yes.
in the second session. The second session is split into 3 parts. The first one is our environmental impact. The second one is the social impact, and the last one is a call to action, basically an interactive discussion on what we can do to mitigate our social and environmental impact. So we're going to be discussing how, in which ways actually our food choices impact others. So on the environmental side, we were talking about deforestation, degradation of the soil and erosion. We're talking about pollution and so on. In terms of the social impact, we're going to be talking about the living conditions and the working conditions of people in the food industry. We're going to be talking about impact on heritage and culture of people in various places around the world. And we're going to be also discussing some controversial foods. So for example, palm oil and avocados, but also others. So trying to educate ourselves a little bit about what foods might be causing harm to other people around the world, and what we can do and how we can minimize our food production of these specific ingredients to maybe help have a little bit lesser impact on the environment and on people elsewhere.
All right, y'all, we're going to end this session now, and there is an intermission. I think there's an intermission room on the thing if you haven't had enough Zoom yet today, and you just need to be on Zoom constantly. You're welcome to join the intermission, and hopefully we'll see you back here in about 12 minutes.
Thank you so much for coming, everyone. If you want to reach out to me on Instagram, my Instagram is Victoria Loses 100. Always happy to chat. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, same thing. Victoria, you would maybe put your Instagram handle in the chat, and I'll do the same. We'd love to be connected with y'all. And I'm just going to leave the room open. I'm going to end the stream.